Well, hello there, my dear sewing friends. Today we are back to one of my favorite topics, and that is upcycling. And here I have 3 sweaters. Each one of them needs 1 or 2, maybe 3 things that we gotta fix, from little holes and hems to design elements and style, so that way we can love our clothing again. Now, 2 of these sweaters feature fine knit and 1 is the chunky one. I actually went thrifting for these and I was having such a hard time finding what I was looking for, but I took my husband with me, and if not for the selection of sweaters, then I definitely had a good laugh from his fashion commentary.
9 West made a shower curtain.
The first sweater has a couple of issues for us to deal with. First of all, it has damage on the hem, so we have to fix that. But also the hem is just way too long. I usually don't wear my sweaters that long. And then the sleeves are a tad long as well. And you know me, I usually try to sort of roll up my sleeves. So I do have a little idea in my mind that I think is going to fix that in a very stylish way. And then we also have a hole in the back armhole. So we have a couple of things on our plate. I'm going to start working on the hole in the back armhole, since that is the easiest fix. I'm just going to use a hand sewing needle and thread. And also, I don't want that hole to go any further as I'm working on the other parts of the project. Then we're moving on to the hem. Here, a blind hem technique is going to work really well, and you can do that in various ways, by hand and on a sewing machine as well. My choice for today is going to be for the hand sewing stitches, and that is the magic of knit fabric. Especially the chunkier is the knit, the better it absorbs those hand sewing stitches. Also, different people go differently about this technique, so definitely choose what's right for you. Alright, now that the hole is mended and the hem is done, we are ready to move on to the sleeves. And here you will need 2 simple things: a little piece of elastic and of course matching thread for your project as well. First, we're going to take the sleeve. Go ahead and turn it so this is the wrong side of the sleeve. This is one seam, and we want to do all of our work on the opposite side of it. I'm going to take a 6-inch elastic, but I will actually measure 12 inches from the bottom of the sleeve all the way up. Now, we have actually done a very similar technique in the past, but instead of elasting, I created a casing on the side of the sleeve through which we then put a ribbon through, and once you tighten up that ribbon, it creates that beautiful ruching on the side of your sleeve. Here, we have slightly different circumstances of the project that we're working with, so as always, there's more than one way how to achieve the result that you're after. So 12 inches, that's right over here. If you want, you can put your pin in and then take your elastic, place it right over here, and I usually baste it with hand sewing needle and thread, so that way I don't have to worry about this little piece moving around. If you have a piece of chalk or maybe with a white basting thread, you can go ahead and baste this line, which we're going to follow in order to stretch the elastic and sew it onto the sleeve with a zigzag stitch. And now onto the sewing machine. Go ahead and change your stitch setting onto the zigzag. And here I want to tell you that this is the finicky part, so don't feel bad if you find yourself redoing it a couple of times. I certainly do, and it's just a matter of doing it slow and steady, even if you have to do it a couple of times. I'm going to bunch up this sleeve here and try to do my absolute best. Don't forget to backstitch at the beginning and at the end, and usually this technique is done flat before the seam of the sleeve is assembled, but obviously here we're working with a ready-made sweater. And also, if you want to make sure that you're stretching elastic evenly throughout the whole length, you can go ahead and make little markings before you start sewing, so that way those markings are proportionally the same on the elastic and on the sleeve, and the whole thing is super neat. Once I'm done with one sleeve, I'm going to repeat exactly the same steps with the other sleeve as well. And after that, we are all done. So let's take a look. We had a hole. I don't even remember which side it was on, but it's all gone like it never was there. Then we fixed the hem, which was way too long. Plus we had that unraveling bit. Now it's all tucked on the inside. Super nice and neat. You can't even tell that anything was done to it. And of course, we have this nice little ruching on the sleeve. The elastic on the inside still gives it flexibility, so that way you know it's still stretchy. And overall, I'm actually really happy with this little upcycle. These tiny little minor details definitely made all the difference. So I truly want to encourage you to go ahead, take a look at the things that you don't wear and reimagine them in small but really effective ways, so that way you can love them again. You guys know that I absolutely love to give you that extra tip and extra idea, so here it is. Sleeves are a really great way how to upcycle anything and give that new and fresh look to your garments. So here, this is another upcycle, and I do have a full video about it, but instead of upcycling a sweater, I actually upcycled a scarf, from which then I made this sleeve. Now, of course, you don't have to do it the way I did it, you can actually do it in reverse. So let's say you take a sweater like I'm wearing right now, and then you cut away the sleeves, and instead you insert a gold sparkly sleeves, or maybe sleeves from gray chiffon, or anything else interesting that would make you want to wear this piece of clothing again and again, and upcycle it into something useful. In my case, this scarf happened to be a gift from my mom, so I really wanted to preserve that, and the body of this sweater I made from a remnant that I had from a previous project. So it was a win-win all around. One done and two to go, and in this sweater, the one and only and the biggest problem is the neckline. It's just one, too tight, and number two, it's really awkward. I don't know, it just doesn't look right? Anyway, we can totally fix that. And I have this beautiful sparkly purple fabric because, you know, I like a little sparkle. And I think we can marry these two together because the sparkle is very similar, yet the color is different, which I think adds a bit of an interesting design to the whole sweater. I think I will try to fix the neckline by first cutting it open, and I'm going to do that on the back side of the sweater. I removed my tag first, then found the center back and measured about 4 inches or so down the center back. And then the most nerve-wracking part, which was cutting it. After that, I rounded up the bottom just a little bit, so that way when I fold this little cut part onto itself twice and sew it very neatly with hand-sewn stitches, it would create a beautiful keyhole opening for the back. So here I have cut this purple glittery fabric into strips, which I'm going to turn into ties for the back of the sweater. After the fabric is cut, I'm going to do the whole thing, you know, sewing the one side and then turning them right side out, possibly even giving them a little bit of a good press, depending on the fabric that you're using. And once they are done, I need to figure out how am I going to assemble them together with the neckline. After testing how this cotton blend knit reacts to heat, which was really good, I thought, you know what, this is what we're going to do. We are going to take the neckline, fold it down. Basically, it's a single fold hem, just instead of a hem, it's a neckline. And then it will also create the perfect space where I can tuck in those little ties, secure them so that way no raw edges are visible. And of course, the neckline was hand sewn down because, as I mentioned before, knit fabric absorbs those hand-sewn stitches really well, and it leaves absolutely no mark, especially if you do it really well. So, are you ready to see it? So here we have business in the front. So we opened up the neckline. As you can see, it's really nice and neat. And then we have party in the back, people. I'm not sure if you can tell, but I'm really happy with how these upcycles are going because I really needed some sweaters in my wardrobe. But now each one of them is super special as well, even with such little details like this one. Now, another really great way how to go about upcycling your sweaters and other clothing is to use them as fabric for sewing clothes for your little ones, just like I did right over here. So this set has been entirely made out of 2 sweaters that I had, and I actually made them as well, but I had them for a long time. I did wear them really well, and it was definitely time to give them second life. And even after I made this little set for my daughter, I had a little bit left over, so I did put it aside just in case if I want to add some detailing in some future projects. So definitely don't throw your scraps away, because they come in handy in all sorts of different ways. All right, I'm ready for this next project. So this is that chunky knit that I was telling you about, and I'm holding a zipper in my hand, but that's not the only thing that we need to fix about this. This is sort of like a tunic sweater, and I definitely need to A, make it shorter, B, take these buttons away and save them for another project, and also rework the neckline. And I think I saw a hole right over here, so we have to fix that up as well. The buttons are off. Now, before we get started, a little bit of knit interfacing is really great when working with a chunky knit to prevent it from like unraveling in all sorts of directions, and I just happen to have a little bit in black. Right now, I think I'm going to use the bottom ribbing and I'm going to fold it under, and it's going to serve as the facing for the zipper when it goes in, and that will also reduce the length of the entire garment, which is part of my goal. Now I have to figure out how am I going to cut the armhole and the shoulder seams, and I don't want to touch the side seam because it's perfect the way it is. There's a ton of negative ease in this sweater dress, but that's great because this really nice bulky knit is super stretchy, so when you put it on yourself, all that negative ease makes it feel nice and snug around you. Okay, so I think I figured out how am I going to cut the shoulder seam and the neckline, because I don't necessarily like that floppy neckline. I would like it to be more like a turtleneck. And for this next step, I'm going to cut some strips of interfacing, and I'm going to secure almost all of the areas where I'm going to be cutting with that interfacing. All right, now that everything has been cut, my first step is going to be joining the shoulder seams, and I'm going to do that on my serger. Now, after that, I'm going to finish up the armhole very quickly because I actually didn't interface it, but I did cut away the original armhole, that little ribbing piece. So I'm going to baste it in first, and then I will sew it in the round on my serger as well. Now that these steps are done, I can go ahead and move on to the neckline. And here, it's really easy and straightforward. All I want is a turtleneck, which basically is a large tube that would fit inside of the neckline of your garment. So here, I'm just measuring the neckline and transferring those measurements onto the old neckline and cutting the rectangle that will then form the tube. And I will apply little strips of interfacing on the edges, so that way I know that one doesn't come apart. Now for this next step, I'm going to cut apart the center front of the garment and then attach the turtleneck. And after that, one of the final steps is to install a zipper. Since this is not a zipper installing tutorial, we're going to zip through it, pun intended. And basically you just take your zipper, lay it flat, switch to your zipper presser foot, go ahead and install it, then flip it over and top stitch it if you would like to top stitch it. I think it adds a really nice clean look. And then you're going to repeat exactly the same thing on the other side as well. But you do have to make sure that everything aligns, especially if you have neckline going into the turtleneck and also on the bottom, that ribbing piece. I always make sure that they align on both sides of the zipper, because then it really makes it look good once it's all done. This next step was a complete afterthought. Once I tried it on, I didn't necessarily like that long turtleneck, so I decided to fold it under and just hand tuck it to the neckline. As a result, it actually made it more sturdy, and I really love it. And I also did some hand sewing on the bottom of the sweater vest as well, so that way it would hold the ribbing through the entire width of the garment in place. Well, I think I like it. It's nice, it's warm, it's snug. I feel very comfortable wearing it, so I'm definitely giving it a win. Now with upcycles here and there, I usually have one or two things that I would have done differently if I was sewing this from scratch. But since we're working with upcycling clothing, you just gotta work with what you already have at hand. But sometimes it gives you even better result than any of the ideas that you would have done from scratch. Like for example, this denim jacket that turned out fabulously. I took two denim skirts with really beautiful details and turned them into really fabulous jackets. If you want to see that, take a look right over there, and I will see you in the next video. Bye!